The series starts by showing a different side of life in Paris in 1999. It reveals things like stealing, robbing, killing, and prostitution. The dirty business in the city is dominated by 6 mafia families who share money and power. But disagreements and sometimes fights happen among these families, needing someone to keep control in the criminal world. This duty falls on a woman called Furie, known as the sheriff of the underworld. Those who meet her are destined to meet their end. Then, the story moves to modern-day Paris, focusing on a young woman named Lyna. Lyna is a college student and the child of a criminal, while her boyfriend is a police officer named Ellie. Lyna's dad, Darius, works as an accountant for the mafia bosses, tasked with laundering their money and distributing it in secret. One day, Lyna is surprised to find out that 2 million euros have been put into her account. Darius then explains that he transferred the money, which came from his job laundering mafia money. Not long after, during Lyna's birthday party with her parents, a bullet suddenly hits Darius, killing him. Seeing the danger to her daughter, Lyna's mom quickly puts her in a safe room, planning to deal with the attackers herself. Shortly after, when the police forcefully enter, Lyna manages to escape. However, Lyna is still in shock and refuses to answer when questioned by a police officer named Kata. After that, Kata tells Lyna that her mom is safe, but warns her about possible jail time because of the large amount of money in her account. The police also know about Darius's occupation, but they struggle to access his encrypted documents. Soon after, Ellie comes to free Lyna, but Kata and other officers stop him, suspecting that the culprit is Furie. At that moment, Lyna is forced to reveal the real identity of Furie, but she chooses to keep silent about the incident, even if it means she has to spend 6 months in jail. During the first month of Lyna's imprisonment, she has to endure various violence from other inmates. Sometime later, Kata visits Lyna in prison and informs her that the police have failed to find her father's murderer, so the case is closed. Upon hearing this, Lyna is determined to hunt down Furie, who is suspected of being her father's killer. Several months later, nearing her freedom, Lyna retaliates against one of the prison guards who had previously harassed her. However, as a result of her actions, Lyna is thrown into isolation room. There, Lyna meets a muscular inmate and forced him into providing information about Furie. If Lyna seemed weak 6 months ago, she's not anymore. Now, Lyna manages to overpower the inmate and obtains information about Furie. Finally, Lyna gets out of jail and meets her mom again, who is now in a wheelchair and emotionally affected by what happened before. Fueled by a desire for revenge for her father, Lyna starts a mission to follow where mafia money comes from. But Furie unexpectedly keeps an eye on Lyna's movements, who receives reports from her subordinates. Lyna's photo, along with pictures of children, is seen displayed. Lyna's surveillance continues to the location of an illegal casino on a cruise ship. While sitting at the gambling table, Lyna is forced to participate in the bet, even though she is focused on observing mafia members collecting money. After that, Lyna realizes that the losers must strike their hands with a hammer, so she reluctantly continues the game. To help her get away, Lyna intentionally lets all her coins fall, a move that guarantees her win in the game, as confirmed by one of the players named Orso. After leaving the ship, Lyna sees mafia members loading all their money into a special car. At the same time, Furie's subordinate named Lou Boer continues to monitor Lyna's movements as she watches over the money from the casino. After that, Lyna tries to visit her mom again at the hospital, but faces trouble getting inside the place where her mom is getting treated. Eventually, Lyna meets Ellie again, who has been waiting for her for a long time. Despite Lyna being imprisoned for 6 months, Ellie has always faithfully waited for her. The next day, Lyna acts again to prevent the money truck by disguising herself as a police officer. Although Lyna's actions were initially thwarted by the mafia, she doesn't give up and jumps onto the truck while hanging on. Lyna then beats the truck driver until the truck stops. After that, Lyna hijacks the truck and leaves. However, Lyna doesn't take the money in the truck because her goal is only to lure out Furie. The next day, Furie's subordinate named Simon arrives at the location of the money truck, and it turns out Lyna is across the street watching the truck, hoping Furie will show up. Not long after, a middle-aged woman accidentally bumps into Lyna, and the woman turns out to be Furie while communicating with Simon. Even Furie casually notices Lyna when her subordinates try to capture Lyna. After escaping, Lyna finally realizes that the woman next to her before was Furie. After that, Lyna sees Furie getting into a taxi. Later that evening, Lyna forces the taxi driver to reveal where he dropped off Furie. Upon arrival, Lyna sneaks into Furie's house after seeing her leave. Inside, Lyna finds documents about her parents, but Furie notices Lyna's presence, which was planned by Furie herself. It turns out, the woman that Lyna had beaten in the isolation room had been assigned by Furie to tell her secrets to Lyna, and Furie is quite impressed by Lyna's clever plan to find her. Unexpectedly, Furie plans to recruit Lyna as her henchman. Shortly after, Furie's husband, Papu, comes in. Papu is a simple man who loves cooking, joins the talk. Additionally, Lyna learns that Furie's real name is Selma. Shortly after, Lyna attempts to attack Furie with a pistol, but Furie manages to snatch her gun and declares that she is not her father's killer. After that, Lyna finds the name mshorror from her father's documents and remembers that mshorror used to gamble with her father. According to Furie, mshorror is the alias of one of the mafia bosses. Where Lyna suddenly recalls that at that time, mshorror forced her father to embezzle money. After that, Furie introduces her subordinates named Lubuer and Simon to Lyna, where Lyna eventually agrees to join Furie. At the same time, a masked man is seen holding a power saw in front of mshorror. Not long after, Furie takes Lyna to meet the 6 mafia bosses known as the Olympus. As the guardian of order in the criminal world of Paris, Furie works for them, as disputes often arise among them due to the struggle for money and power. Additionally, mshorror is one of the mafia bosses suspected of killing Lyna's father. Meanwhile, Simon reveals a list of high-level criminal leaders to Lyna, starting with Yosef, who plants drugs in all the gardens and vertical parks in Paris. Then there's Tran and his partner, who manage gambling games and the money truck Lyna previously stole. After that, there's California, a hacker specializing in market fraud and digital extortion, followed by Fihim, a pickpocket expert, and Mama, a woman known as the Queen of Prostitution in Paris. After that, there's Key, who's skilled in stealing from safes in the Brotherhood, and one of the 3 mafia members from the Brotherhood called mshorror, who isn't at the meeting. It turns out, Furie gathers these mafia bosses regarding the death of Darius. As a troubleshooter, Furie is obligated to investigate this case before the mafia's order collapses, potentially causing chaos in Paris. Furie has been carrying out this task for years, just like her mother and grandmother did. Not long after, the leader of the criminal underworld assassins, known for his extreme cruelty named Parquet, appears. When Parquet assaults a servant, Lyna doesn't stay silent and immediately confront him. On the other hand, the Key brothers feel offended because mshorror is accused of killing Darius. But their talk is stopped when a package arrives with mshorror's body parts, shocking everyone. After that, Furie reappears and orders Parquet to release Lyna. But Parquet momentarily underestimates Furie, as her hand trembles at the sight of mshorror's dismembered body. Shortly after, Furie and her henchmen piece together mshorror's body parts, but they can't find his head. After that, Lyna is allowed to go home, claiming she will stay with her mother in the hospital. However, Lyna actually stays at Ellie's house. The next day, Lyna is punished for being late. But Furie also teaches Lyna how to free herself from Simon. Shortly after, Lubuer appears and shows CCTV footage from Mama's container, which contains young girls to work in her brothel, where mshorror was spotted. Strangely, mshorror only took 1 girl, so Furie and her team are unaware of this issue. After that, Lyna is assigned to infiltrate Mama's brothel. Not long after, Lyna disguises herself as one of the girls who will work at Mama's brothel. After that, Lyna secretly infiltrates Mama's office. But Lyna gets trapped in one of the rooms, where one customer waiting inside. Luckily, Lyna manages to escape and finds Mama's office filled with many female dolls. Lyna's task now is to find the identity of the woman brought by mshorror. However, there are too many documents there, so Lyna struggles to search for it. Shortly after, Lyna immediately disguised herself as one of the dolls after Mama and Parquet enter. Meanwhile, Simon expresses his curiosity to Furie after she recruits Lyna without any prior examination or training. Returning to Lyna, where Mama presents documents belonging to Asma, the girl brought by mshorror. Asma turns out to be an undocumented immigrant who arrived with her father. After that, Mama assigns Parquet to kill them both, as well as anyone associated with her container. After they leave, Lyna quickly escapes with Asma's documents. But Parquet spots Lyna and immediately gives chase. Lyna then hides in a room and fires a weapon to attract the attention of the police. However, Lyna sees that one of the officers is Ellie, so she disguises herself with a costume to conceal her identity. Unfortunately, Lyna is hit by a car driven by Kata. After that, Kata seizes the documents, and if Lyna wants them back, she must cooperate with her. Upon hearing this, Lyna reluctantly agrees. Not long after, Lyna now resides in an apartment provided by Furie, next door to Orso, whom she met at the casino. Meanwhile, Ellie is unaware that Simon has entered his home, curious about who Lyna truly is. After searching around the house, Simon finally discovers that Ellie is a police officer. At the same time, Lyna wonders about Orso, but he refuses to reveal his true profession. The next morning, Furie wakes up Lyna. Provided with information from Lyna, Luboer successfully brings Asma before them. Unexpectedly, Jwer isn't interested in Asma. It turns out he wants her father, who is an expert in making duplicate keys. After that, Asma explains that 3 days ago, her father sent a message saying he was okay. From the sounds in the video recording of Asma's father, Furie and her team conclude that Asma's father is in a trailer near the railroad tracks, with a dog present. After that, Luboer deduces the likely location where Asma's father is being held captive. Sometime later, Simon visits Lyna's mother's hospital room. While going through a photo album, Simon discovers pictures of a young girl. At the same time, Asma's father, the key duplication expert, is held captive by the masked criminals who killed Jwer. At that place, Asma's father is tasked with creating a key to the masked man's specifications. After obtaining the duplicate key, the masked man orders his henchmen to destroy the place. However, Furie and her team are already there. As Lyna attempts to infiltrate, she is startled to face a ferocious dog ready to attack her. Meanwhile, Furie and Luboer take action to eliminate the masked gang. Shortly after, Lyna manages to get into the truck and immediately searches for clues about the key, where Lyna finds a message written by her dad to Jwer regarding a safe. Unexpectedly, among the documents and papers Lyna secures, there is an explanation about a special key made of silver to open the safe. But it's not just any safe. Furie believes that the masked man plans to crack the safes of the mafia bosses. And the safe is guarded by Tran, so Furie contacts him immediately. However, Tran doesn't respond to her message, so Furie plans to meet him immediately. During their journey, Furie reaches a temporary conclusion that Darius collaborated with Jwer. However, it seems that a third party working with them has betrayed them, and Furie suspects the masked figure to be the one. Upon hearing this, Lyna doesn't believe her father would betray Olympus. However, Lyna is surprised when Furie already knows about her relationship with Ellie. After that, Furie gives Lyna a choice to end her relationship with Ellie or Furie will kill him. Although Lyna loves Ellie deeply, she has no choice, especially when Luboer points a gun at her. Not long after, Lyna meets Ellie at a restaurant. But Ellie is surprised by Lyna's decision to end their relationship, especially since he had prepared a wonderful vacation for them. Meanwhile, Furie was at Tran's casino looking for him, when suddenly there was an explosion at Tran's place. At the same time, Simon finds a picture of a 3-year-old girl, but it's not Lyna. After that, the scene shows the creation of Olympus, which started from the 7 criminal families of Paris in 1928 during Selma's great-grandmother's wedding party when there were fights among the mafia. After that, the mafia groups came together, and Selma's great-grandmother became the first Furie to keep peace among them. This duty has been passed down through generations to the present day. Back to the present, after the explosion, Furie engages in a shootout with the masked criminals. But Furie fails to stop these criminals and lets them leave with the safe. Outside the ship, Luboer and Lyna have arrived, and Luboer gives Lyna a pistol for self-defense, although Lyna is reluctant to kill. As they enter the ship, Lyna almost becomes a victim, but Furie immediately saves her. Unexpectedly, the safe cannot be opened because Furie holds the last part of the key. The contents of the safe are not money or gold but a family book, which is the strongest weapon of Olympus. After that, Furie explains to Lyna that the safe will be opened when the mafia bosses gather once a year. And inside the book, there is a list of names of the people they serve, meaning high-ranking individuals who have been eliminated. So, if the contents of this book are leaked, the entire Parisian criminal system will collapse, and Furie concludes that whoever stole it is undoubtedly hungry for power. Soon after, Tran showed up and asked Furie for help in getting back the safe, saying that if they failed, everyone would be eliminated. If something happened to Tran, Furie and her team would also in danger. Shortly after, when Lyna returns home with Simon, he forces Lyna to reveal her true identity because the real Lyna had died when she was 3 years old. Upon hearing this, Lyna is shocked because she didn't know that she wasn't her parents' biological child. When Lyna returns to the hospital, a nurse secretly contacts someone. After that, Lyna asks her mother why there are no pictures of her when she was 3 years old in the family photo album. Upon hearing this, her mother only shows Lyna a drawing she made when she was young, where her mother points out that Lyna is the dark figure in the background of their family picture. After that, Lyna goes to the bathroom briefly, but when she returns, her mother is being held hostage by an assassin. At that moment, Lyna tries to save her, but she is cornered by the assailant. Fortunately, her mother shoots the assailant just as he is about to kill Lyna. After that, Lyna's mother puts the assassin's body in a laundry basket. Then, she tells Lyna that the real Lyna has died, which surprises Lyna a lot. However, Lyna chooses to immediately take the assassin's body, where suddenly Ellie chases after her to the basement. At that moment, Ellie realizes that Lyna is involved in Darius' death and intends to help her find the killer. Shortly after, when Ellie sees the basket Lyna is carrying, he finds out the body is no longer there. This is because Lu Bu'er helped Lyna hide the body. When Lyna returns to headquarters, Simon is apparently torturing one of Tran's henchmen, forcing him to reveal why there were no guards at Tran's location. At that moment, the man confesses that he was ordered by Hervé, who is Tran's son. It turns out, Hervé is collaborating with the masked criminals they are searching for. Additionally, Hervé is known for managing his own business called The Game of Death, which aims to make money from gamblers worldwide. One of his gambling events includes a competition where people's lives are at stake. After that, Lyna was assigned by Furie to go undercover to capture Hervé, and Furie believed Lyna could handle this task, even though it risked her life. Upon returning, Lyna failed to enter her apartment, so Orso invited Lyna into his room to treat her wounds. After that, they ended up enjoying their time together. The next day, Furie escorted Lyna for her latest mission, where Lyna briefly showed her picture to Furie and explained about her mother mentioning that the real Lyna had died. At that moment, Lyna thought that Furie already knew her true identity, and she also asked if Furie was her mother. But Furie denies it, even though they are still blood-related. Not long after, Lyna was taken to a corridor where several people were already held captive. They were forced to participate in a death game orchestrated by Hervé and his associates. After poisonous gas was released, Lyna and the other victims immediately ran and vicious dogs were set loose to hunt them down. One by one, the victims began to fall, as Hervé had prepared various deadly traps. Eventually, only Lyna managed to escape, and she immediately attacked Hervé to be taken away from the game location. Lyna then gave Hervé a warning shot, demanding to know where he hid Tran's safe. On the other hand, the mafia bosses gathered at Tran's location to reopen their safes. At that moment, Tran and his wife appeared nervous because if these mafia bosses found out their safe was missing, Tran would likely be killed. However, Furie asked them to remain calm and smile. In the end, the safe was successfully retrieved by Furie's team. Meanwhile, Lyna asked why Darius wanted the safe, and Hervé mentioned a surprising fact about Darius, who wanted to keep Lyna away from the mafia life. And all this was planned by Darius precisely because he loved Lyna dearly, even though it meant betraying Olympus. On the other hand, the Olympus mafia bosses were eager to see their safe. Luckily, the safe was already in its place, after Lyna and Furie's team successfully completing the task. At the same time, Hervé was locked up in a room inside the ship, but suddenly the masked criminal reappeared and gave Hervé a pistol. Meanwhile, Lyna was surprised to find out that Orso was Parquet's henchman. At that moment, Parquet was about to capture Lyna, but his action was prevented by Furie. Surprisingly, Furie announced important news to all the mafia bosses, where Furie introduced Lyna as her niece and a potential future Furie. Upon hearing this, Parquet could no longer underestimate Lyna lightly. Furie then stated that Lyna's biological father, Driss, was her brother, and her mother's name was Kahina. They died in an accident when Lyna was still young. After gathering all the keys, they opened the safe and found Jwer's severed head inside. Everyone was shocked when they realized the book was missing. Suddenly, Hervé showed up and tried to shoot Furie, but Lyna shot him first, committing her first act of murder. On the other hand, Ellie now believed that Furie existed and Lyna was trapped in the criminal world of Paris. Shortly after, Furie told the story of Driss, who died in a failed robbery. At that time, Driss was chased by the police until he lost control of his car. Unfortunately, Kahina, who was with Driss, also became a victim. But Lyna wondered why she was raised by strangers, not by Furie. Upon hearing this, Furie explained that she didn't want Lyna to be in danger. On the other hand, Furie faced a new problem because Parquet had planned a coup with the support of the mafia bosses. Mama and Tran had ensured their support for Parquet, while the Key brothers were still hesitant. Upon knowing this, Simon and Le Boer immediately moved to handle Yosef in California, while Lyna was tasked with negotiating with Fihim, the leader of the pickpockets in Paris. When they arrived at Fihim's place, he stated that he wanted to remain neutral. But Lyna pressed him, so Fihim eventually agreed to support Furie. However, Fihim seemed very cautious, as if he had his own interests. On the other hand, Parquet didn't like the idea of Lyna becoming Furie's next successor, so he tasked Orso with killing Lyna. Meanwhile, Lyna and Furie went to the morgue, where Furie examined the bullet removed from Jwer's head. The doctor also found a piece of paper inside Jwer's mouth, containing a code commonly used by Fihim to assign pickpockets as couriers. To decipher the code, Furie and her team now had to investigate Fihim's dark business. After some investigation, it turns out that Fihim's message sender would split the code into 3 parts, so if one of the codes was found, the police wouldn't be able to decode it. After that, Lyna conducted an investigation to obtain a copy of the code, where she observed Fihim's henchman handing the paper to 3 pickpockets, so Lyna immediately followed one of the couriers. After that, Lyna saw the 3 couriers enter a photo booth to load the message, and the resulting photo of the message was taken by a girl who went to a mysterious location. Sometime later, Lyna and Furie entered the location, which turned out to be Fihim's headquarters. Surprisingly, Fihim didn't use alarms or digital locks to protect his valuables. Inside his headquarters, Fihim only used an old alarm system consisting of thousands of crisscrossing strings with bells on top. At that moment, Furie reminded Lyna that if they failed to pass through it, Fihim would appear. Although Lyna wanted to enter immediately, Furie held her back until later that night. Lyna then hurried home after receiving a threat from Keita, who planned to frame her with drugs. Upon returning, Lyna reluctantly promised to hand over Furie to Keita, but she needed more time. At the same time, Ellie was outside Keita's house watching Lyna leave the house. Not long after, Lyna entered her apartment, while Ellie entered the one across the hall. When Lyna returned, Orso suddenly fired shots, leading to a fierce fight between them. At that moment, Lyna was puzzled why Orso shot at her. Eventually, their fight ended in their intimate moment. At the same time, Ellie, who witnessed this, realized that Lyna had betrayed him. On the other hand, Simon mentioned that the bullet retrieved from Jwer's body was destroyed by Olympus 20 years ago, and Simon mentioned that the owner of the bullet was Driss. But Furie doubted it, because it was actually Furie who had killed Driss. Meanwhile, Ellie grew more upset because his earring was found on the floor of Orso's apartment. On the other hand, Orso realized that he would be in big trouble if Parquet found out that he didn't kill Lyna. At the same time, Lyna was shocked when Orso explained that her biological father had once fought against Olympus, so the mafia bosses wanted Driss dead. But at that time, only one person had the right to kill Driss, and that was Furie. That night, Furie and Lyna entered Fihim's headquarters. While in the middle of the trap string arrangement, Furie's illness relapsed. Unexpectedly, Lyna deliberately stole Furie's medicine and forced Furie to reveal what really happened to her father. In the end, Furie confessed that she couldn't bring herself to kill Driss because he was her own brother. Therefore, Furie hid Driss in a secret prison. After learning this, Lyna resumed her mission to obtain a copy of Fihim's message. After that, Furie chose to leave to distract Fihim and give time to Lyna. Eventually, Lyna managed to find the contents of the message that related to the delivery of weapons on Thursday, the 22nd, at 11 p.m. in Greenwich. Shortly after, the mafia bosses arrived at Fihim's location, upon Furie's invitation. On the other hand, Kata sent a message saying she had captured Ellie by framing him with drugs found in his apartment. At the same time, the masked criminal appeared in front of Lyna and demanded the message she had found. The message turned out to be related to the schedule of Yosef's weapon delivery, which would be robbed by Fihim. After successfully obtaining the message, the masked man blew up Fihim's car, then left. In the end, the mafia bosses knew that Fihim had betrayed them, so they all agreed to execute Fihim. Sometime later, Lyna met Furie again and admitted to wearing a watch that had recorded all of Furie's confessions, threatening to send the evidence to the police if Furie didn't reveal where her father was. Shortly after, Furie met Driss and she wanted to know who had used the bullet. Upon hearing this, Driss reminded Furie that the truth would be revealed. On the other hand, Orso appeared to have eliminated dozens of Parquet's henchmen. But in the end, Orso was stabbed by Parquet and left alive by him. Sometime later, Lyna met her biological father for the first time in prison. They both seemed happy, while Driss mentioned that Lyna was very much like her mother. After that, Driss wanted to know what Lyna had been up all this time. On the other hand, Ellie was thrown into a cell filled with gangsters, and he was immediately beaten. Kata then took a photo of Ellie's beaten face to send to Lyna as a threat. Not long after, Kata returned home and found out that her younger brother, Thomas, had brought his girlfriend home. But Kata was surprised to learn that Lyna was her brother's girlfriend, and it was Lyna's way of retaliating against Kata. After that, Lyna insisted that Ellie to be freed, warning that Thomas would be in danger if she didn't comply. Eventually, Ellie was released. Even though Ellie found out that Lyna had cheated him, he decided to forgive her. On the other hand, Lyna found out about Driss's location not from Furie, but from Ellie's police files. Unfortunately, Ellie realized that Lyna had looked at his laptop. It turns out, Ellie kept the bullet from the person who attacked Lyna's mom because he was investigating it. At the same time, Lyna was shocked to see a photo of Orso's body in the grave. Meanwhile, Simon was meeting with Parquet to discuss that Orso's death had ended the feud between Parquet and Furie and her team. Sometime later, Lyna was seen with Ellie in a cafe, but suddenly 3 men started shooting their weapon. Lyna fought against them all, but when she was cornered and almost shot dead, Furie saved her. After this incident, Furie sent Lyna abroad. Lyna then reported this to Driss, and he disagreed with Furie's plan, believing she was planning something. At that moment, Lyna recalled the moment when Furie asked her about the message she found in Fihim's car. Not long after, Lyna met Ellie again and planned to take him away. But Ellie actually wanted to report Lyna because of what happened before. In the end, Lyna decided to leave. Right then, Lyna felt upset because she couldn't trust anyone because of Driss's influence. Before deciding to leave, Lyna met Driss again. However, Lyna realized that this prison was already arranged by Driss, and these prisoners were under his control. Additionally, Lyna also knew that the masked criminal was Driss, and he was the one who killed Darius. And Driss now planning to kill Furie. Upon knowing this, Lyna immediately remembered all the kindness and attention from Furie, making Lyna feel guilty. After that, Lyna acted again to fight against her father. After realizing that Furie was in danger, Lyna quickly went to save her. On the other hand, Orso turned out to be still alive and rose from the grave. But Orso was immediately placed in a dog cage by Parquet. Not long after, Lyna was late because Selma had been killed by Driss. Selma's body was even burned right in front of Lyna and her team. With Selma's death as Furie, it could be ensured that it would lead to a major war among the mafia. And Lyna had a great responsibility as the new Furie to stop it. At the same time, Selma's death also presented a great opportunity for Parquet, who had been chasing his position. On the other hand, Papu couldn't believe the news of his wife's death. But Lyna promised him that she would give the perpetrator even worse punishment. Not long after, Driss and his men launched another attack to eliminate all the Olympus mafia bosses, and their target this time was the remaining Key brothers. Shortly after, Driss seized all their gold bars and killed all the Key brothers' henchmen. Afterward, Driss killed the Key brothers by stuffing a hand grenade into their mouths. On the other hand, Simon and Lubuer just found out that Driss was the perpetrator. It turns out, Selma had deliberately kept it secret all this time for their safety. And as the new Furie appointed by Selma, Simon had no choice but to accept Lyna's orders, although he didn't like Lyna. At that moment, Lyna was convinced that Driss was launching random attacks. With the next suspected target of Driss was Yosef, who ran a marijuana business. When Lyna and her team arrived at Yosef's headquarters, he seemed relaxed, thinking he had increased security and didn't need Lyna's and her team's help. But Lyna didn't give up and informed Yosef that one of his henchmen often stole his valuable plants. At that moment, the culprit tried to escape but was immediately caught. Thanks to this information, Yosef finally agreed to accept Lyna's help. After that, they prepared themselves to face Driss's attack. But the figure that arrived was actually Parquet and his henchmen. Unexpectedly, Parquet brought the body of one of Driss's henchmen, so Yosef chose Parquet to help guard him rather than Lyna. Later, Lyna and her group were told to bury the henchman's body. Simon, feeling annoyed because he thought Lyna wasn't as smart as Selma when she was Furie, decided to leave, so Labour went with him. Meanwhile, Driss started an attack on Mama's brothel. While Lyna was digging, someone hit her from behind. Meanwhile, the mafia bosses watched a video of Driss ruthlessly killing the mercenaries who were supposed to protect them. In that video, Driss promised to keep chasing them until he finished what he started 20 years ago. Afterward, Mama suggested deploying Damocles, a dangerous mercenary, to face Driss. Although it was a highly risky solution, they had no choice but to do it. But they didn't know what Damocles wanted in return, whether it was money, a share of their businesses, or perhaps one of the mafia boss's heads. Before making that decision, they hoped that Parquet could fulfill his role to kill Driss and his henchmen. On the other hand, Lyna saw footage of her foster parents planning to fight against Olympus and kill Furie to save Lyna. At that time, they were talking to Jouer and had collaborated with Driss. Lyna's foster mother apparently didn't want Lyna to become Furie, who would eventually be shot dead like the previous Furie. Suddenly, Driss appeared in the bulletproof glass room in front of Lyna. Despite being her father, Lyna actually wanted to retaliate against Driss and refused her biological father's offer to collaborate. After that, Lyna decided to go and invited Simon and Lubuer to see Selma's body. Earlier, Lyna had discovered the fact that there were characteristic scratch marks made by Selma on the bodies of two of Driss's henchmen who were killed. According to Lyna, it was a message that Selma, the Furie, was still alive. And to convince both of them, Lyna invited Papu to see and touch Selma's body. After touching her body, Papu was convinced that it wasn't Selma's body and their task was to find Selma again. Not long after, Lyna's suspicion proved true because Selma was in Driss's prison. Driss apparently had a grand plan to rob the armored train, where the mafia bosses of Olympus hid their gold, paintings, and all their treasures. It turns out, Driss had forced Selma to reveal the route of the train. On the other hand, Lubuer received information that Parquet had been appointed by the mafia bosses as their new Furie. At that moment, Lyna wondered how Parquet knew that Yosef would be attacked, while in fact, Parquet had actually worked with Driss. Although his henchmen were sacrificed, Driss didn't mind because he needed access to the mafia boss's secrets, which were held by a Furie. When Parquet met with the mafia bosses, his phone was given full access to their secrets. Soon after, Lyna confronted Parquet directly, but Orso stepped in and quickly stabbed Lyna. However, Parquet was tricked because Orso actually preferred Lyna over him. In the end, Parquet was shot dead by Lyna. On the other hand, the armored train, referred to as the treasure trove, operated beneath Paris, with a length of 77 meters and special security devices. The treasure of the mafia bosses on the train exceeded the GDP of France. At the same time, Driss was surprised after found out that the key to the train was now in Lyna's hands, and Lyna wanted to exchange the key for Selma's freedom. In the end, Driss and Lyna had a meeting at a location, where Selma was seen being brought by Driss's henchmen, but Driss had positioned 2 snipers around them. Surprisingly, Lyna chose to kneel, as dozens of special police forces had surrounded them. In the end, they were all captured, including Selma, Driss, and Lyna. On the other hand, Orso was invited by the remaining Parquet's henchmen to free their new boss who was captured by the police, and it was Lyna. Meanwhile, the mafia bosses decided to ask for Damocles' help. But not to kill Driss, but Furie and Lyna. Not long after, the police car carrying Lyna and the others was attacked by the remaining group of Parquet's henchmen. At that moment, Keita and Ellie tried to fend off the attacker and they ended up found a house in the woods. At that moment, the owner of the house was told by Keita to go to the nearest police station for help. Afterward, Keita contacted other police using the radio. But upon hearing a woman's voice, Lyna realized that it wasn't the police, but Parquet's forces, so Lyna immediately stopped Keita. At the same time, a helpless policeman was shot dead by Parquet's henchmen led by a woman named La Grey. After that, La Grey ordered her team to search the forest area. On the other hand, Lyna, Selma, and Driss were handcuffed in a room by Ellie. At that moment, Lyna intended to offer help, but Ellie no longer cared about her. However, the weapons and remaining bullets that Ellie and Keita had would certainly not be enough to face the killers, so they barricaded the doors and windows. Meanwhile, Selma's recurring illness suddenly flared up again, where Driss helped Lyna remove the handcuffs, so Lyna could immediately save Selma. Shortly after, enemies began to arrive and gunfire broke out again, resulting in Keita being shot in the stomach. At that moment, Lyna faced the attacker, but she was overwhelmed, so Ellie helped her. But Driss suddenly pointed his gun at Ellie, after Selma helped him remove the handcuffs. At the same time, Parquet's forces led by La Grey intended to go to Lyna's location, but they were eliminated immediately by the Damocles. Returning to Ellie, who was about to be finished off by the enemy. But the Damocles immediately arrived and fired shots, where Selma immediately sprayed the fire extinguisher to cover the Damocles' view. At that moment, Selma couldn't believe that Olympus would call the Damocles. Feeling targeted, Driss invited them to cooperate against the Damocles. But Lyna first reclaimed Parquet's phone containing the key to the Olympus Mafia's treasure trove. After that, Lyna hid her phone inside a sheephead doll. Meanwhile, Furie was sure the enemy would launch an attack later that night. And as they tried to plant something on the rooftop, Lyna was almost shot by the enemy. That night, Ellie was surprised by the appearance of Orso, who came to help them against the Damocles, while Driss used some knives to set traps. Shortly after, one of the Damocles members was spotted standing outside the house, seemingly issuing a challenge. Following that, Driss informed Lyna that her mother didn't die in an accident, but because of Selma's actions. Unexpectedly, the owner of the house returned and requested to come inside, but there were explosives hidden in his jacket. After that, an explosion happened, and as a consequence, Ellie and Orso were targeted. Upon seeing this, Lyna decided to rescue Orso, which led to Ellie getting shot in the shoulder. After that, another intense fight broke out. As the Damocles group moved forward, Ellie threw a gas canister from the roof and was then shot by Driss, resulting in a huge explosion. Unfortunately, one of the attackers was still alive because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. Orso's shots didn't hurt him. Instead, they bounced off. After that, Lyna tricked the enemy into falling into Driss's trap. Eventually, the knife trap stabbed the enemy. Meanwhile, Selma encountered one of the Damocles in the forest and almost became a victim herself. On the other hand, Lyna was momentarily cornered, but Driss quickly came to her rescue. Similarly, Selma was saved by Lubuer and Simon, who arrived just in time. After the enemies were all eliminated, Driss escaped with Lyna's phone, as Keita had leaked the information. When Keita was about to shoot Lyna, Ellie unexpectedly killed Keita. Afterward, Lyna wanted to know if Selma had killed her mother. Upon hearing this, Selma revealed that Lyna's biological mother was an undercover police officer. After her cover was blown, Kahina disappeared, and feeling betrayed, Driss continued to hunt down Kahina's family. But until now, Kahina's whereabouts remain unclear. Not long after, Selma appeared in front of the Olympus mafia bosses, revealing her mission to hunt down Driss. Selma also mentioned that Driss and his group had started to hunt the treasure of the mafia bosses. But there was another main target, which the data center in the last carriage of the train. After that, Selma and her team tried to thwart Driss's evil plan, who wanted to use software to find Kahina. On the other hand, Driss was already on the train, forcing the IT team inside to decrypt the data code. Meanwhile, his henchmen were busy looting the gold belonging to the mafia bosses. At the same time, Selma, back in her role as Furie, and Lyna successfully infiltrated and began eliminating Driss' henchmen. After that, Lyna threw a bag containing gold as well as her phone with a tracker, so Simon and Lubuer could locate the train. At that moment, Furie advised Lyna to take deep breaths to oxygenate her brain, so she could stay focused in emergency situations. On the other hand, the data code was successfully decrypted, prompting Driss to shoot one of the IT employees and instruct the remaining ones to locate Kahina. Meanwhile, Furie found active explosives set by Driss to detonate the train, where Furie warned Lyna that it would be extremely dangerous if it exploded at the station. After that, Lyna continued her mission, while Furie planned to defuse the explosives. On the other hand, Ellie, who was traumatized, intended to confess to Thomas that he killed Kata. But Orso intervened, leading to a fierce fight between them. Eventually, Lyna called them and asked them to find out the train's location, so it could be directed to a safe place without civilian casualties. However, before Ellie and Orso could reach the central station, they had to deal with security forces who wouldn't allow them entry without high-ranking officials. Returning to Lyna, she was inside the carriage of paintings while facing Driss's henchmen. After a fierce fight, she managed to kill them all. Shortly after, Lyna had to confront Driss and his henchmen in the server room. At that moment, not wanting to waste energy, Lyna deliberately triggered the fire alarm with a lighter. But the server room was sensitive, so instead of water, the oxygen inside the carriage was sucked out. In that moment, Lyna used the breathing technique she was advised, and all her enemies suffocated. At the same time, Ellie and Orso managed to enter the control room and stop the train. Returning to Lyna, she found that Driss wasn't among the bodies. Surprisingly, Driss had already gotten off the train as soon as it stopped. Lyna quickly shot at Driss and chased after him. Meanwhile, Furie managed to deactivate the explosives just in time and follow them. Sometime later, Furie found Driss weakened, and he had accepted being shot by Furie rather than Lyna killing him. After that, Furie invited Lyna to meet the Olympus Mafia bosses to say goodbye, as she was tired of it all. Surprisingly, all the Olympus Mafia bosses had been killed by the Damocles forces, and the main leader of Damocles appeared and asked Lyna and Furie who they were working for now. Then, the series ended. Moral lesson from the story: always double-check your sheephead dolls for secret phones, because you never know when you might need to call for help during a family feud. And remember, trust your instincts, especially when they tell you to bring a fire extinguisher to a gunfight.